So yes, Tetrung and I have crossed paths a number of times. Tetrung has honored us by performing at the Rubin most recently in a Losar celebration, which is a big family Sunday experience with hundreds and hundreds of kids and their parents and their relatives and Himalayan communities, and it was a really wonderful experience. But this is actually the first chance that I've had to have a face-to-face conversation of any duration with this artist. And so I really thank the World Music Institute for the opportunity to do so. But I think because we're going to be talking a lot about folk traditions in Tibet and the Tibetan diaspora, we should perhaps draw upon Tibetan wisdom in the form of its folk wisdom and proverbs, which and one of which goes, just as a vessel is hard to hold without a handle, so speech is hard to understand without illustration. And as we're going to be talking about music this evening, maybe we should illustrate with music before we get talking. So Techung, so great to share this moment with you. And maybe, shall we just start off with a video that you have of one of your performances so we get the full set of instrumentation, your voice, and then maybe we can talk about it and go in through to the conversation like that. Does that sound good?
Sure. Yes, I can definitely do that. So there we go. Okay, so just play. Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Tetrung.
Yeah.
So tell us about that piece and the context so we understand the role of the dance and the instrumentation, and also what were you singing about?
So this is an ensemble of traditional musicians from Lhasa, from central Tibet. And the ensemble consists of a couple of instruments, which I will demonstrate later. And then, as you notice that we are sitting down playing instrument and the singers, and then the dance is part of the piece. We're doing a döshe, which is a traditional piece that came from western part of Tibet. And I was singing about the sacred temple in Lhasa. There's the Shakyamuni Buddha there in Cho, and the song is about from distant you are, wishing to see the sacred temple of Lhasa at Chokang.
Mm. This is something that I think we should talk about a great deal tonight, because it forms such an important part of Tibetan culture as a whole, which is the nature of the sacred and the role of the music in portraying or conveying what is precious, what is to be valued in our spiritual lives, as opposed to necessarily our material lives. And so Brian made reference to the background, to the screen here that is behind me. And this is a painting from the collection of the Rubin Museum of Art in New York. And it's one of the seminal illustrations of the Buddha's original teachings, called very often the Wheel of Life, Wheel of Becoming. And the reason I mention it now is because it leads into something that Techung and I want to really talk about, which is, again, this role of music in spiritual awakening. And here, the Wheel of Life is basically about your psychological reincarnation and their various forms it can take. You can either end up as an animal or a hungry ghost or in the hell realms, or as a human, or as a demigod, or as a god. And the gods usually think they have it all. Well, in a way they do, because in each of the realms, there's a bodhisattva who offers the chance to reincarnate psychologically or otherwise into a higher realm. And it's, however, only in the realm of the gods that you see a bodhisattva with a musical instrument, allowing music to be the conduit to a spiritual escalation and transcendence. And so, Techung, maybe we should start with the question of what was the first music that you actually ever heard, that you remember hearing in your life? I mean, you were born in exile in a very disruptive settings. Your parents were always moving around and having difficulty settling in India. And so what were the first musical sounds that you actually recall?
My first musical experience and sound is two. There are two kinds. One is that when I, first of all, you know, I am from Tibet, and Tibet is in the Himalayas, and we came into exile in 1959. And then my mom was doing construction works, you know, building roads and stuff like that. So my first music, I would say, is like those songs that my mom and her people, you know, doing the road construction, because Tibetans love to sing when they're even doing floor making. We have songs for floor making and all of this. But when I came to Dharamsala in India, where the Tibetan performing arts started, where His Holiness Dalai Lama resides and have been residing there for a long time, we had the school where the performing arts school was started. And there I started learning the first Tibetan dance. And in the dance, I have to learn the song of the dance piece, which was like some kind of historical song. And then with that, I heard a lot of, you know, music of Indian popular music from the transition radios of 1950s, 60s, you know, popular Indian music. And so those are two, you know, experience I have heard songs.
So Bollywood, which is kind of what you're referring to, that you would hear on the radio, probably didn't necessarily have the spiritual underpinnings that some of your homeland music would have had. So let's talk about your association, what your feelings are now about, presumably you're a practicing Buddhist, and if I'm wrong, then please correct me, but what role does that play in your music making and your appreciation of the music that you have drawn from your culture and the music that you also create anew?
Mm-hmm. The experience of it's a collective, it's a combination of many years of, you know, holding on to. And also, as a Tibetan refugee, we always have a responsibility in keeping our culture alive in exile. And for me, luckily, you know, the music plays a role. And there are a lot of songs that I have learned when I was in Dharamsala, India, in the Tibetan Performing Arts Institution, that I learned from my elders. And what I am doing right now is kind of making these songs available, you know, for the world community to hear, and all, at the same time preserve this part of, you know, culture that is facing a little bit of danger of, you know, losing. So I have this responsibility, and so this is what my life is involved around, you know, the traditional music and being who I am at the moment.
Yeah. So what you mentioned TIPA, which is the school for, what's the full name of the school?
Performing arts.
Performing Arts.
Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts, yes.
Right, in Dharamsala. And so you were put into that school. Did you show any particular talent that made your parents think, no, this boy is going to become a star, or what were the circumstances?
No, Tim, you made me star. I'm never a star. So, yeah, my mother and those days. So we're talking in 1960s, and when Tibetans came into exile in 1959, a group of elder Tibetans in Kalimpong. There's a town called Kalimpong near Darjeeling in India. And the elders, they started this music group, and when they feeling nostalgic about Tibet, they thought they were going to be there for only 2-3 weeks or 1 month, in exile. They were all thinking of going back. So they started this music group, and that's the one that moved to Dharamsala. And that's a school where I went to. And my mom and elders those days, they were all kind of figuring out life and what to do with their children, and many kids were sent to boarding schools, and with the, of course, guidance from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So kids were being educated and things like that. I would have been sent to like schools somewhere, but this performing arts school was in Dharamsala, and my mom was living there, so she made it easy for me to be there. So she dropped me there without much of talent or anything, and I don't recall having too much of passion for music or anything like that too.
And so how did that develop? I mean, you had a number of teachers at the school, and yes. Which particular teacher stands out for you now in your memory? And what was so special about the way they cultivated an appreciation of your homeland culture there in Dharamsala?
Yes, in Dharamsala, the collective of the teachers, I think that's, even though there was no direct kind of, one person I remember, I do remember a few, teachers, but that whole community, that collective elders that were like very focused. They were very focused on our identity, our culture, and trying to go back to Tibet since that sense, So whatever they taught me, even those days, it was not very strong for me. I don't, appreciate that much. But now I get this, like after 30, 40 years, I, remember them, and whatever they taught me is like completely in me, and I am sort of very influenced, and so I stayed in this school for only 27 years, and we were like a family. We were living like a family. It was, first they were called Tibetan Dance and Drama Society. So it was around 1962, 63, they started, in Dharamsala. And then they changed the name into Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts. And so this school of performing arts was where everything art, music, dance, opera, theater, everything was taught. So we were like juggling everything there. And so from that, I kind of now chose more into the music, the traditional music.
Well, they say in another Tibetan proverb, a child without education is like a bird without wings.
That's
so
right.
What made you fly and take flight to United States?
Oh, a little bit of karmic, a little bit of, I always wanted to come to US to do further studies in theater and things like that, arts or stuff like that. And then I came here to do a theater work with a group of Americans. And then after that, 1 year of, doing Western theater like Shakespeare's and, also Asian theater too, like we did some Nose. So I was exposed to other culture, other theatrical tradition. And after that, I did a tour of me and a couple of my groups, members, TIPA groups. We toured around US and shared Tibetan music and dance.
Do you have any pictures of that time so we can get a sense of the context and the surrounding, or?
I didn't gather that, so I don't have picture of that right now to share with you.
But of the time in Dharamsala, do you have pictures of those? Or
yes, I do. Of course.
Something like that.
Yes.
That'd be lovely to see. Just to get a sense of the context in which you.
So what I'm going to share with you is this photo that. Sorry, I have to go from the beginning. Okay,
that's
so
you in the middle. Yeah.
Yes, Yes. So that was me. Well, this is in Dharamsala. Now I'm going to share with you kind of the Tibet, which we call it, or the goddess play. They call it fairy or goddess play. And this was formed this was established in Tibet or started by a saint known as Tangdong Gyalpo in 14th century. Tangdong Gyalpo was a wild yogi. He has many names. One was called Chaksampa, and he's known as building these suspension bridges in Tibet. I think it was like 50 something. And for that, he created Tibetan opera, which is Hamo, and to raise funds to bridge. So he built, because in Tibet, we have the hugest, biggest river, and he saw the suffering of the people, pilgrims who were going to do, sites, sacred sites. So he created Tibetan opera, and this is in India, Dharamsala. We're performing as a festival called Shöten. It's called Yogurt Festival. So this is one of the photos, and you will see that how the performance is normally done outdoor, 8 hours, the performance. And these are the music performers of mass dance and goddesses. These mass dances are the purification dance in the beginning of the opera. And they sing and they do a lot of performance of sharing a Buddhist, kind of ideas and morals, but also it's a comedy, a little bit of tragedy, a little bit of moral stories, and these are goddesses. And this photo, particularly inside Tibet, they are still reviving these performances. And this is myself with the Tibetan opera master, Genob Sirinla, who late. And I was in my teens maybe, and I'm doing a role with him, and the Tibetan kids are being shown the Tibetan opera. Should I keep going?
Yes, do, because this is fascinating, and there's also, it's intriguing for me to see what looks like a basketball net.
Yes, right.
In this traditional presentation. That's great that you can adapt the largest courtyard into spiritual and cultural use. That's great.
Yes. So this was in the school where we have, in exile in Dharamsala, it's a small town. So we have a lot of mountains, so we don't have big places. So basketball is so good for us for good exercises because it just don't need too much space. So this is a school called Tibetan Children's Village, where a lot of children were educated, given education. Dalai Lama, His Holiness Dalai Lama's sister runs this school, were educated, and a very full school. They still exist, and that's where we do annual performances. And then in 1975, Tibetan Performing Troupe, or Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts, we got an opportunity to tour international in Europe, America, with the support from a very special woman named Kazuko Hilia, who lives in New York City. She was a promoter and art impresario. She brought Tibetan opera to the West for the first time in history. And I was the youngest performer in the troupe. So myself performing as Padmasambhava. It's a story about Padmasambhava, Guru Rinpoche, who was a very big teacher for Tibet, 6th century. And this mass character is part of the opera. So should I keep going?
Yes, although I just want to pause on Padmasambhava because he's also known as the lotus born, right? So he was
completely, yes.
A lotus in the middle of the lake. And it just so happens that at the Rubin Museum, we've got an interactive project called the Lotus Effect, where we're inviting everybody to create an origami lotus and do as an act of compassion, think of somebody you want to benefit by doing this actual practice. And we're also inviting everybody to bring those lotuses to the museum and make a great installation out of them. So I love the fact that the lotus theme carries through your presentation too. But I've got a question here which riffs off one of the questions that are happily coming in on the Q&A line, which is about notation, because is how much of this music form, whether it be the more formal opera or right through to the folkloric range, how much of it is notated in some sort of music form or some sort of illustration, or is it all oral transmission?
It was very much oral tradition, very much. And when we were learning these, and nowadays we have music notation books, and notations are like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, like 1, 2, 3, 4. We sing like so, 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 do, re, la, so, re, mi, do, re, so, la, la, do, re, mi, like that. And that was, our teacher was, you know, he was using this notation when he was teaching us. And but back in Tibet, we didn't have the notation. It was adapted later. And then we have all the words in the Tibetan operas. We have to learn very oral, but the words are they're all in the text, and the storylines are all in text.
I see. Yes. Okay. So that is yeah. I mean, there was a process by which the oral traditions were actually put into book form. And I mean, we should all understand, I think anybody who is watching this, that Tibet has the proud tradition of a great oral epic, which is probably the longest in the world, called the Epic of King Gesar, which exceeds the Mahabharata, the sort of Iliad and the Odyssey and all the other epics all put together. It's quite extraordinary. So so do you actually refer to the King Gesar epic at all in your work, Techung?
There was, in 1980s, a director named Jamyang Norbu, who sent me actually to a community to learn epic dance of Gesar. We call it Lingzhou, the Jiromo. And I went there and studied with the masters there for few weeks, and then came back, and at the school we performed that, and that was kind of a performance of like 2-3 hours of dance, mostly dance in praise of Ling Gesar, you know, the epic king.
So why don't you take us through another picture? That'd be great.
Yeah. So this was me, and then the middle one is the reincarnation of Padmasambhava in that Tibetan opera known as Pema Wembar. And this was a performance of our tour to the West in 1975. And there were a lot of people involved in organizing this. There was also a lot of pressure from the Chinese government to cancel the performances we had to wait in Europe because some of the performances got canceled, and we had to wait in Europe for 2 months. Even in 1975, there was a lot of pressure. So now here are the group of musicians.
Can I ask you just about, Techung, do you mind? Because you have 2 names, right? You have the name you're born with, and you've adopted the name Tetrung as a professional name. Is that right? And
yeah.
And why? And also, what does Tetrung have a meaning for you?
Interesting name given to me, a nickname when I was in the school of performing arts in Dharamsala. One of our eldest, Tibetans have like Peter Brown, or you know, like now common names like Peter or Tom. There would be many people, many kids. So Techung means Tashi Tenduk Chungwa, which is the Tashi Tenduk younger Techung. So that's the nickname I got. And okay. Tashi Tenduk was the common name.
Thank you for that. Good.
So this is a rare photo from 1930s or I don't know, earlier, of Tibetan musicians in Lhasa in a courtyard, ready to play, you know, for event. And this style of music that I'm preserving right now, or you're recording, is called Nangma and Töshe. And here we have a couple of musicians, and these music were established in Tibet in 18th, 19th century. And there are 2 kinds. One is believed to be older and one is newer. And the Nangma, as you see, there's a guy with a mustache. He's a flute player, is from Kashmiri Tibetans. We call it Kaji. So they're Tibetan and Kajis, and also the ladies behind, next to the pillar, are the singers, and they're the female singers who, you know. And here's a photo of Ajahn Namgyal, who was Ajahn Namgyal was born in 19th century, sorry. And he was a very important person who kind of originated that, flourished the Nangma Töshe style of music in Lhasa. He was a blind musician from Thakpo. And so here he himself playing Tibetan Piwang.
Do you have
And this guy,
Techung, can I ask you, do you have that instrument with you? And because we're curious about
yes, I do have that
the
instrument.
quality of these instruments, and maybe it would be kind of great to hear you demonstrate some of them.
Yeah, sure. So this instrument is hanging on my wall as the decoration. So these are called gyuniba, or two-string instrument, and they are pretty high pitched. So watch your ears. So I'm going to bring it too close. Like, so this is two strings, and the bow kind of goes in between. And this is part of the ensemble, but it came to Tibet in the 18th century by a Tibetan scholar. And he Doring is his name. And he brought this and a hammer dulcimer, and they were incorporated into Tibetan music. A little bit off.
Is that instrument used only as a solo, or do you see it also in an ensemble?
In the ensemble.
In the
Much
ensemble.
more than
So
solo, yeah.
it's rarely heard on its own.
And rarely heard on solo, yeah.
And you know, we're getting some really interesting questions in, and I'm going to draw upon those, I think, to chart our course from this point forward, because they're very useful pointers to help us better understand the nature of the music itself, which we really want to get to. So one question that came in says, would you talk about the formal structure of the traditional music? Is it organized by scales or modes, harmonies, rhythm, and meter? Are you comfortable talking a little more technically about music? And then perhaps if you can demonstrate it, that would be really helpful too.
Yes, we do have a, we can call it mode, but basically the name, first of all, we will try with the name. We have, generally, we don't have a system of teaching music with like the system that, you know, universal system that here in the US or in other cultures. We have the traditional ones that are, you know, passed down in the community. Dance and music always goes together. You know, we don't have a system of teaching music or dance in a formal way, more oral tradition. But in Lhasa, in the capital of Tibet, we have these two genres known as Nangma and Teshe. And when we talk about the music, we don't really talk about the beats, rhythms, or we are mainly talking about melodies. And our songs are based on singing, and then the music comes with that. So, but in the Nangma and Teshe, we have a system which is basically three. Like we have a good introduction of the instrument, then the main vocal instrument comes, and then as you saw in the video, there was a dancing part. So that's the kind of structure that we have of the genres. And then the Nangma, another one, Nangma is also kind of believed that in the music come from Kashmir. And some say it originated Tibet, but there's a Kashmiri kind of influences in there. And that has the same structure, but also like the dance and the slow part and fast part changes like that. So when we are teaching, when we are learning from our teacher, we would not have a beat per se. It's like teacher's kind of mode. He would say, okay, you're going too fast or you're going slow. So it is very observed in a, but right now when I look into the rhythm and beats and stuff, I am kind of accommodating the Western sort of like a beat and rhythm system. And it is sort of merging in a little bit, but ours is very according to our own mood and our own, like kind of, especially when the teacher was listening, their own traditional way.
Right. Well, it seems to me that if you're adopting Western notation to anchor and publish Tibetan music, then you'd sort of need to give it a structure and a rhythm, wouldn't you? I mean, you're almost forced to,
yes,
even though
yes.
you were saying that is somewhat artificial, because moods play such a great role in really generating the energy that you transmit through the music. Yeah.
So here's a book that we have published by the Tibetan Institute of Performing Arts, and in here you have some like text, all Tibetan written, and then the songs, the titles, and then some stories, and here are the notations. Like, do you see some numbers?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So it's written and it's established, but you have to sit next to a teacher to learn it, because it's not going to go that easy, because the beats are not completely steady. So sometimes it has to be, learned from a teacher to get it completely right. And especially when the fast part goes, it has to be accompanied with the dancing.
Well, that is the same in terms of Tibetan Buddhism and its transmission. You have to learn it from a teacher, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that was the problem when we were learning, when we were performing with him, he would say, hey, go slow down, slow down, slow down. And then the community was saying, hey, this is so slow music. Come on, cheer up a little bit. And then we were going a little bit faster. And as I get older, I'm like, okay, whoever says what, I'm just going to follow my teacher,
What other instruments would be part of the ensemble that we could listen to now?
Yes, I'm just going to share with you. This is called Gyumang or dulcimer. You can see it a little bit here performed with the two sticks. And we call it Sindhi. And basically, dulcimer, we call it Gyumang or Yangqin, kind of imported from China in the 18th, 19th century. But originally, the hammer dulcimer are from Persia. It was the gift of Persian music. And we use pentatonic and 5 and 7 notes. One from the Western Tibet, which is two genres in Lhasa, Tershe and Nangma. Tershes are the ones that are coming from the western side of Tibet. And they are mostly using 5 notes. And then the Nangmas, which we think originated or influenced by Kashmiri music, we use 7 notes.
And so, yes, that's interesting about the pentatonic scale, because also the chant in the monasteries conducted by monks and nuns, they're also at the pentatonic scale, aren't they? So is there any association then between the chant that is conducted within a totally religious institution, such as a monastery, and the folk? Do the two meet in any sense?
2 meets, yes, 2 meets, but 2 also doesn't meet very well too. Because
explain.
Because
tell us an example.
We have a saying like, hey, you're singing, sing, you're chanting, chant,
Right. Okay.
Do that, because don't mix, and also the musicians, as I was growing up in Dharamsala, that like any other society, Tibetan society was not very favorable with musicians and arts, because there's always they don't consider them very serious, like that. So that was a difficulty I had. But anyway, they meet and they don't meet. But as I said, the songs are very much about honoring spirituality. Very, we have songs about Milarepa, songs about Ajahn Nangsa, who was like a female practitioner, very folk hero in Tibet, and a lot about Dharma and a lot about His Holiness. We sing and nature and elders respecting, romantic drinking songs, satirical songs.
So yes, when you talked about the sort of the difference of content and style, and the sort of that some of the folk music is looked down upon, or you don't exactly respect each other's forms. Did you find when growing up in Dharamsala that I mean, this was India and still is, and did you find that the Tibetan culture and Tibetans generally were well received? This is actually a question that has been put by one of the viewers.
I would definitely say India was so important for all of us. They were very open to accommodating the Tibetans in exile, starting from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. They accepted him, and we have our exile, administration. We were not that popular in India when I was growing up. We were not noticed that well, because we were refugees, and we were up in the hidden and kind of But now they are very aware of Tibetan situation and about Tibet, because His Holiness's name, his work, and his respect for India, and also the younger generation they are multilingual, and they can speak in Hindi. I mean, I can speak a little bit of Hindi too. A lot of Bollywood movies, and then and they are educated and stuff like that. So the bridge, there's a lot more, the Indian community a lot more engaged in our culture and our situation.
You performed for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, haven't you?
Yes, a few times, yes.
And what were the circumstances? Were you invited to do that as a special event, or was it just an informal occasion?
I just wanted to share with you that with His Holiness Dalai Lama, of course, he's an international figure and he cares about everybody. But when the Tibetan Performing Arts was first established in 1960s, his palace was not very far. And he often comes to the school and he goes into the kitchen and says, "Hey, how's everything going?" And he says, "Okay, take care, you guys. Okay, right now it's a tough time, but keep up your good work." And he always comes and visit, and we always perform for him. When we have some new productions, especially when we came to the United States or international tour, we previewed him. And he also comes these days also to the opera festival. So then I opened it for him in Japan and a few places, and of course, very special, yeah. Honored.
Yeah. We're looking forward to your questions as we start closing up, because we want to wrap up by 7 or so. But so do contribute your questions on the Q&A board. That would be really great, because I'll be happy to read them out and have Techung address them. One of which actually was one of the first questions offered, was, is there any Tibetan folk music associated with the Bardo Tudor that you perform or know of? So we all know about and have heard about the Tibetan Book of the Dead. This is the great liberation through hearing. And so maybe you'd like to talk a little bit about that, and whether there's any music associated with that particular teaching that you know
of. Not really, but I can just say that we are very conscious, even the folk musicians are very conscious about Bardo, and there's one song that I could say, it's, the 6th Dalai Lama's song about Nangma Amaleho, and he kind of, 6th Dalai Lama, kind of disappeared because of the political situation that time. And he wrote one poem which became very popular song in Lhasa. Almost all Lhasans know. And it's about the white crane and talking about his rebirth, the 6th Dalai Lama's rebirth. And that song is probably the closest one. We don't have any esoteric Bardo songs, no. I don't have. Nowadays, of course, there are,
Thank you for that question. But you mentioned the White Crane, but that's you've just recorded that song, have you not?
Yes, that's my video. I recorded that song and a music video, which will be released on August 1st. But yeah, I have that song I can share with you if you.
Yeah, could we have a sneak preview, please?
Yes, yes. You mean I will sing live here, no? Is that
yes,
okay?
sing live, absolutely. We'd love to hear that. Yeah.
So this instrument is one of the traditional instrument part of the Nangma and Deshe, and this is called damnyen. And we have 6 strings on here, and this part is leather. And this is kind of like a national instrument in Tibet. You know, the folk people in the West, they dance, they sing, and this is a folk instrument. And there's a little thing here, it's this plectrum we always attach, so people get fascinated. We don't lose it. So this is a song that I was sharing with you, and it's the most famous in Lhasa area. This is the shorter version.
And when can we hear the longer version, Techung, in its entirety? When are you publishing that? Remind us.
It's going to be on August 1st.
August 1st. That would be an auspicious day for us all.
Yeah, and also through the World Music Institute, we have the opportunity to organize an ensemble tour in the fall, this coming fall. And if everything goes well, I think we will have an ensemble touring the big United States and sharing this music alive.
That'd be wonderful if that can be made to happen. We're in such uncertainty right now, but we're just grateful that we have the opportunity to explore this particular music form with you. You write new work, of course, and White Crane is an example, drawing upon a text by the 6th Dalai Lama and creating music for it and recording it. But you've done so much remarkable work on recording original traditional folk music. How were you able to go about that, and what did it take to create this repository, this
we have a saying in Tibet that, which is a little bit of a, kind of make us feel good, is like we have an ocean of music and songs, ocean of songs. We are kind of pretty rich in that. Songs about construction, songs about, harvesting, songs about, songs to lamas and all kinds of stuff. So as I was growing up, I learned these traditional songs and this and that. And last 10, 20 years, I was suddenly, thinking like, okay, what am I going to do? I was also interested in composing new songs and stuff, but then suddenly hit me that all of that I've learned in India and taught to me by my elders, I have to preserve them. I have to, keep them somewhere. So I started this project called Tibetan Music Preservation. And so far in the last 10, 15 years, I've recorded kind of 40-ish songs, professionally with the help of many people. I did fundraising and learned a lot about finance and music and, producing and all of that. And I was really I learned it in a hard way, but basically learning is great. So I have uploaded almost 40 songs. Right now I'm working on the last one or two that will make it 40. And there are people, really good people have helped me. So there's many that could get lost, because elder generations have all kind of moved on, and I am the middle now, the bridge. So I feel that survival of traditional music and needs not only me and Tibetans, but also like Westerners, Americans, and European, international other people to hear it and appreciate each other's music and culture.
Techung, tell us where we can hear some of those songs, or indeed all 42.
You can go to SoundCloud, and if you put my name there, the musics are all uploaded there, free of charge, of course, and with soundcloud.com.
Well, that's a great contribution to the preservation of your culture that you're doing, Tetrung, and we greatly admire your tenacity in making that come to be. That's such important work. So you talk about yourself as a bridge. Do you notice many of the younger generation taking up your mantle and your inspiration for preserving work or creating new work? Or is that a challenge?
It is a challenge, yes, of course. We were a small community in exile, and Tibetan community in Tibet under China is also pretty small, and they're very much influenced. So we had a very strong influence from, outside influences. And there was, when I was growing up, there was a really a danger of losing a hope, because there were, the generation was not interested in traditional things, and it was very dark time. But now, I think there is a definite sense of improvement, and I see some younger kids, multi-language, some in England or in US, some young girl teenagers, they're picking up the instruments and playing, and it's very inspiring. So trend is changing, and how much I'm contributing, I think I'm a little bit of contribution in that, encouragement or inspiration.
Do you have an interest in cultivating associations with, we're here under the auspices of the World Music Institute, right? And yes. So do you readily perform with musicians from other traditions around the world?
Yes, a little bit, yeah. Yeah, a big one.
What's that experience like, and how well does it work for you?
It has been, I never grew up, we were very traditional, so it's a little bit hard to, I think for the Western musicians, it's probably easy, but for me, it's very hard to kind of collaborate instantly. Traditional musicians are not very, improvisation thing is not allowed too much. And now I'm learning and I'm becoming, I think it's changing from me right now a little bit. So I'm just listening to other forms and, and I'm just flexibly getting a little flexible. So I think if music, just like anything else, if there was good understanding, I think there's possibilities.
Talking of flexibility, as a vocalist as well as an instrumentalist, but as a vocalist, keeping your vocal cords limber is always a challenge for any singer. And yes, there is Tibetan opera, and we know about Western opera and how they train and the scales that they do. What do you actually keep to do on a regular basis to actually keep the flexibility of your tone and your range? That would be interesting. What's a day in the life of Techung, the day that you perform? What do you do?
Oh, yes. A day of my performance, of course, I have been prepared at least 2 weeks. But nowadays, so much distraction with learning about music recording and editing and film editing and all kinds of stuff. You do get a little bit complacent. And So what what I like to do is that I would really, when I do real performance, I would at least have 2 weeks of kind of practice, playing and mindful about my voice. And basically, as Tibetan saying, we said best medicine for your voice is your own voice, singing. So as long as you have that kind of practice, it all goes well. And I do a little bit of care of not drinking like milk stuff, and it kind of harms my throat. And also a flexible fluid, and I also like to be open, going outside and have a nice walk and stuff. So that all helps to keep me in good spirit.
Well, I've got one last question for you, Techung, which is really taken from, really inspired by a radio program that I grew up with in Britain called Desert Island Discs. And the premise is that you are to be abandoned on a desert island, and you have only 8 pieces of music that you can take with you that you might end up having to listen to for the rest of your existence, right? So they have to be very special. And so my question to you is, you don't need to take any Tibetan music with you because you can perform it yourself. But what other forms of music would you want to listen to on your desert island without knowing that you'd ever be rescued from it?
I will definitely include my favorite singer inspiration, is Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, the Pakistani Qawwali singer, and I would add a lot of Qawwali music in my list. And then I would add Beatles and Rolling Stones, and I would also add like some jazz music like Dizzy Gillespie and Wynton Marsalis, and also I would like some like Tinarwan, from Mali, African music, and David Bowie, and some Bollywood music, of course, from the 70s, old Bollywood songs.
So your childhood is revisited after all on your desert island.
Yes.
Well, folks, I hope that we've been able to show the more facets than you thought were possible with Techung, the extraordinary Tibetan artist and conservationist of folk music and music traditions from his homeland culture. And Techung, it's been just such a pleasure to hear your music live, online, virtual, but very real to us, and understand a little more about the context and the meaning and the really exquisite and particular nature of this very individual culture that we all want to see preserved and continued in decades and centuries forward. So thank you for your really, really important work in this regard.
Yes. And I would like to thank World Music Institute for this opportunity. And not only this opportunity, I think bringing the global community a little bit together through art. And Tim, thank you very much. Tim and Rubin Museum for your effort and your hard work in educating, bringing closer all of us together. Appreciate it, and your being here today is very special for me. And this opportunity was wonderful. And thank you very much, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you. Hello, Gabby.
Hello. Thank you so much, Techung and Tim, for this wonderful time. And as Tim already covered all of the points that I was going to say, so I don't want to duplicate it. It was a true experience, and we thank you so much for making that possible for us. And we look forward to hopefully presenting you live when we can all gather again on a real stage and we can enjoy your ensemble. And thank you all for attending as well, and for your questions. And please wait for tomorrow. You will get the email, which will have the video and the recording of this session, so you can keep watching it and watch it again. And please also fill out our questionnaire and come join us again for upcoming events. worldmusicinstitute.org. Thank you so much, and a very personal thank you to both Techung and Tim for making time and for being with us and having us at your homes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is anybody tried to make the Tibetan momos? The
dumplings?
Yeah. Any success?
Hold on. We will let you know.
Okay.
Because the chat room is closed now, but we will let you know.
Okay. All right.
Thank you so much. I made them actually, but I didn't eat them tonight.
Okay.
Bye. Bye.